Okay, I'm here with Minnie. This is Minnie. Olive is outside, so we can show you in this video how you can use counter conditioning to stop a dog from barking or reacting. Now, Minnie thinks she's in charge. Now, one of the tills that we've done for this is I have her guardians put her on a leash. The more the dog moves around, the more what we call aroused they get, and that's more animated or more intense. So Minnie thinks that she is in charge of the world because she doesn't have any rules. So if I stood up, she's going to bark like crazy because I don't have her permission to stand up. So I'm going to wait for her to look. Now, she would normally bark more, but the leash is preventing her from running around a little bit. Now, she didn't try to get up, but she can recognize the leash is done. Counter conditioning is basically a replacement behavior. So I've given her guardian here a bunch of treats. Now, you saw what happened when I stood up. So what we're going to do, and I do counter conditioning a little bit different. So sometimes I have amateur dog behavior experts that watch my videos and say, oh, he's doing it wrong. So counter conditioning is basically where you want the stimulus to happen, which in this case is me standing, and then the dog gets a treat afterwards. But because she's reactive, the dog can't be reactive when you're doing this exercise. If you do it properly, there's no growling, barking, or lunging. So what I'm going to have the guardian do is she's going to pop a treat in the dog's mouth, and then she's going to kind of hold it so the dog's looking in my direction. When Minnie's looking in my direction, while the treat goes in her mouth, I'm going to slowly stand up and I'm going to sit back down. So I start out by preceding the action with a reinforcer. So that makes the dog start feeling, well, I bark at you, but my mouth is full. It's rude to bark and talk at the same time. Bark and eat at the same time. All right, so go ahead and just pop one in her mouth, and you don't have to chew it and just let her have it. There you go. And now I stood up and I have no barking. So we're going to repeat that about 3 times. I'm going to wait for her to look at me and try to hold it a little bit lower so she's looking right at me. All right, go ahead and give her another one. Might be easier if you use your other hand next time. There you go. Move my hand, no reaction from her. And let's do one more. There you go. And a little bit higher. There you go. And no reactions whatsoever. You saw what happened first. Okay, so now she's not reacting. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to stand up before we give her the treat. Now, if you move to this stage and the dog starts barking, back up, practice the other state of movement where you're giving the treat first, then the movement. Okay, so as soon as I stand up, I want you to give her a treat. So what we're doing here is we're saying, when she's doing it, when she's barking, is she's saying, I disagree with you getting up. I didn't authorize that. I'm in charge of security, and you're just screwing it all up. So that she's barking to tell me she disagrees with my movement. What we're doing with this technique is teaching her that when the person moves, instead of you barking or protesting, you should like it because that means that you're about to get a juicy treat. So this is where it's called counter conditioning, because we're countering our previous behavior with a new, more desired behavior. Are you ready? All right, ready? So again, I'm going to do it first. There you go. And I think we just inverted the order. So let me stand up first and then give her the treat after. Right, Minnie? Minnie. Yeah. So you can do this with anything. You can do this with a lot of people do this with knocks at the door or the doorbell. People do it with the blender, the vacuum cleaner, all sorts of different stuff. Skateboards moving around, cars. So you can use it really the same technique for anything. So basically, the way you start out, let me just kind of summarize it. So first, you give the dog the reinforcer, and then the stimulus happens. The skateboard moves or whatever it is. Now, if the dog barks or reacts, the dog is saying, it's too intense. The way I lower the intensity is that I increase the distance, I slow down the speed, or I turn down the volume, if it's a doorbell or something like that. So if it's a doorbell and I'm right next to the chime box, that's very proximate. So I might move the dog further away from the chime where we practice this. Or I might muffle the chime box with a pillow to turn the volume down. So the first stage is you give the dog the treat, then the stimulus happens at a low enough level of intensity where the dog doesn't react. My 2 tests, can I get the dog to sit and take a treat? If it won't sit or won't take the treat, it's too intense, it's too close, it's too loud, it's too fast. Once you find as close as you can get the dog to, while it'll stay seated and take a treat while the stimulus happens, that's when you want to start practicing this. So at first you give the dog the treat, and then the stimulus happens, and then you repeat that 3 to 6 to 10 times. Once your dog is pretty much not reacting, and you've had 3 or 4 or 6 in a row, then you have the stimulus happen, like me standing up, and I'll do it again here right now. So stand up, then I get a treat. So, and then let's say we're at 20 paces when we did this, if it's something for distance. So we do this until we get like 5 in a row where she looks at me, doesn't bark, and gets the treat. Then I would have the stimulus move 1 step closer to her and then practice again. And you might get maybe 3 or 4 paces before she suddenly it's difficult to get her to treat, or she's starting to wiggle and get up. You're getting close to her breaking point. In order for this to be effective, she cannot react, or she has to be what we call sub-threshold, which is non-reactive. Once she's reacting, she's basically hysterical. She's not going to listen to you. So you keep on practicing until she can barely take it anymore. Then we stop. So we always stop in a good one. Then we let the dog recharge his batteries, and we come back 15 minutes later to the next day or whenever we want to do it again. But let's say we start off at 20 paces, and then we got to 18 paces before she almost wouldn't sit. Well, the next time we started 18 or 19 paces, so you start at the same place you were or 1 step back, and gradually you work yourself closer until eventually here's the stimulus, here's the dog, and the dog's able to react. But we build success on top of success. All right, let's do this one more time, and this time I'm going to do kind of a big one. No barking whatsoever. Before, she just spent 10 minutes barking when we just let her in the room when I wasn't even doing anything. So here we go. Now, if you say good job or something like that, often when the dog is reactive, so you might want to, if you're going to want to assign a command, I would say something like silence or something that's in context with this is going on. But in this case, you really don't even need to assign it, because eventually the dog just like, somebody stands up and she's like, who's hooking me up? Somebody should be paying me right now. And eventually we won't. She'll get one every other time and every third time. And eventually it's just like people standing up is a good thing. And sometimes they get treats, and I don't need to bark at that. Well, this little terrier, I'm going to say, is Minnie. There we go. And these are some tips and tricks you can use if you have a dog that likes to bark when people get up and move around the room.